So yesterday, we started our new unit on power, Unit 3. And part of that, we watched a video about Mauro Prosperi, right, who was a gold medalist in the pentathlon in the Olympics, and he became lost in the Sahara Desert running the Marathon des Sables for 9 days without supplies. And amazingly, he survived because he was in really such great shape, right? He had been conditioning himself to run in hot weather without a lot of water. That helped him. But what were the 3 resources we established that made up the rule of 3s for survival? You can live 3 weeks without food. Yep. You can live 3 days without water, and 3 minutes without air. Exactly right. And we used that to make an equation, a biochemical equation. Anybody remember what that was called? It's the way we make an energy molecule. I heard it. ATP is the energy molecule, totally right. Aerobic respiration, right? And what does the word aerobic mean?
Exercise.
It doesn't mean exercise, does it? We think it means exercise because we do aerobics, but aerobic means what? It requires air, or more specifically, not just air, because air is mostly nitrogen, requires oxygen, right? And we said that the inputs to aerobic respiration are 2 of the 3 parts of the rule of 3s. The inputs are glucose, which is food that we eat, and oxygen that we breathe, and the outputs are ATP, energy, and then we exhale CO2, and we urinate and exhale and sweat water. And water is a waste product. And at the end of the day, we were talking about that, like, wait a minute, how come water is part of the rule of 3s when it's a waste product? Why do we have to take in something that we're generating as a waste product? And we're going to answer that question today by doing an introduction to metabolism. So the first thing I want to talk about, how many of you like cheeseburgers? Me. Yeah, me too. All right, let's build the ultimate cheeseburger. What has to be on it?
Lettuce, tomato,
Okay.
a bun.
Let's start. Okay, you're going to start with a bun.
Lettuce. Lettuce, tomato, bacon. Patty.
Lettuce.
You don't need the tomato. You don't need it.
Oh, I like the tomato. Jason, you can take the tomato off.
Take it off.
We got a bun, lettuce, and tomato. So far, it's a vegetarian burger.
A burger.
Yeah, we need the meat. What else goes on your cheeseburger, your ultimate cheeseburger?
Cheese.
Cheese.
But it gotta be a certain kind of cheese.
Okay, what kind of cheese?
It gotta be the yellow cheese, because you got our white cheese.
American cheese.
All right. You all like cheese.
No, it's not cheese with a hole in it.
Okay, so far we got a bun, we got meat, we got lettuce, tomato, we got cheese. What else is on your burger? What? Oh, you like onions? All right.
That's what you put in the burger to make it
Oh,
juicy.
yeah,
Let's not play. Y'all know how to make a burger.
You don't
You
need
gotta
that.
brush your teeth after.
All right. What
Y'all know
else?
how to make a burger. That's how you make a burger.
At this point, just add the bottom bun.
We got a bottom bun.
In the actual meat.
Do you like any sauces on your burger? Ranch dressing.
Ranch?
I heard pickles,
Who put honey mustard?
honey, and oh, I heard this one. I heard bacon. Okay, good. Let's bring it back in. Okay, we have a big sloppy burger. That was fun. This is an amazing burger. Now, this is food. Do you know what each of these things is made out of?
Yes. It's made of rat poison.
Rat poison. Well, I'm not eating that cheeseburger. I don't think that we have rat poison. But there are what we call, yeah, so you're on it. There are 3 biological macromolecules that make up all of your food, and also incidentally, make up your body, because at the end of the day, you're made of food, right? So, the bun, anybody want to help me out? Nick, I think you said it. What is the bun? Yeah, the bun is carbohydrates. Aha. We're gonna have to figure out what a carbohydrate is later today. Okay, tell me, what's the lettuce? We have three molecules. One was carbohydrates. What were the other two? I heard them, people say them. Lipids and proteins, okay? So what would you say a lettuce is? Is a lettuce a protein? It has a little bit in it. Is it fatty? Is it like cheese?
Mostly water.
Yeah, it's basically a carbohydrate. How about the tomato? You're right, Jason, it is a carbohydrate. Okay, how about the meat?
Lipids and protein.
Yeah, it's gonna be protein. And you're right, there is gonna be some lipid in there, from animal fat. What about cheese?
It's both.
What is it, both what? Nick said it's lipids, and
Oh,
he's
it's
right.
protein as well.
And there's milk protein in cheese. You guys are good. Okay, what are onions? Carbohydrate. Very good.
This is where you lose.
Okay, ranch dressing.
Lipid.
Lipids.
Yeah, it's gonna be mostly lipid.
Orange dressing.
How about pickles? What are pickles?
Carbohydrates.
They are carbs. Okay, mustard. Ooh.
Lipid.
Mmm, carbohydrate. There's no fat in
It's
mustard.
fat.
Oh, why didn't you say that?
Mustard is a carb, not very much. How about if it's honey mustard? I think it was Acacia. You liked honey mustard, right? Yeah, what's honey?
Honey's protein.
Honey's not protein.
It's a lipid.
It's not a lipid. What does it leave behind? It's a carbohydrate. Here's a hint. Anything that's sweet is almost always a carbohydrate. We'll come back to that. So that's a carb. Last of all, the bacon. What's bacon? Besides delicious.
Protein, lipids.
Protein and lipids. Very good.
I like turkey bacon.
I like turkey bacon.
Okay. So here's what we've established so far. We are breaking down what exactly is your food made of. And everything is either a carbohydrate, a lipid, or a protein. Now I'm going to tell you, there is also a fourth macromolecule. It makes up DNA and RNA, and it's called nucleic acids. But those don't really feed very much into our metabolism. We don't really use nucleic acid to make ATP. So although we're aware that they exist, we're going to focus on these three. And we've got our sandwiches up here, and we established that the carbohydrates are the bun, the tomato, the lettuce, the French fries. All of that are carbohydrates. The lipids are going to be in your cheese or in your ranch dressing or your mayonnaise that you have. And then last but not least, the best part of the burger, where's the beef, is the protein. So those are the inputs into our digestive system, and that's what we call food. That's the first of the things you have to have in the rule of threes, as we learned yesterday. So, what are we going to do today? Today, hello, come on up. We're going to talk about what are the building blocks, which we're going to refer to as a word monomer. A monomer is a single unit of a building block. And in nature, we take that theme. We take monomers and we put them together into polymers, which are longer, bigger molecules. So we're going to learn about what the monomers are that make up our macromolecules. We're going to talk about a special class of proteins called enzymes. And what do enzymes do? We're going to finally answer the question, why is water included in the rule of threes when it's a waste product of aerobic respiration? Why do we have to drink water? We're going to talk about this term, another vocabulary word. What's a substrate? And finally, we're going to look at two models of how enzymes actually work. So let's begin with the biomacromolecules. Macro means big. These are the polymers that we have. And the first class are carbohydrates. The bun, the French fries, the lettuce, the tomato, the honey, and the honey mustard. And carbohydrates are polymers of building blocks or monomers called simple sugars. And a simple sugar, a good example of that, is glucose. That's the input into aerobic respiration. There's also fructose and maltose and sucrose, right? We can start to put together different kinds of sugars, but each one of those sugars is a monomer. And that little molecule you see up there, let me get a pointer stick. Excuse me, Jonathan, let me get a ruler. This molecule right here, that's a glucose molecule. That's a sugar molecule. All right, when we are talking about proteins, which are big polymers, the building blocks or the monomers of proteins are amino acids. This is the amino acid methionine. Every single protein in your body, the first amino acid is always methionine. And incidentally, your body is really bad at making methionine, which is why you have to get it in your diet and you have to eat proteins. One of the biggest problems that vegetarians have is getting enough of the amino acid methionine. That's why if you're a vegetarian, you have to eat beans. You have to eat things like rice or lentils and nuts, which are rich in these 10 essential amino acids. The last of our polymers are lipids, right? And they are polymers built out of monomers called fatty acids. And this guy right here has 11 carbons on it, is called oleic acid. It is the main fatty acid in olive oil, which I love. So here's the deal. When we eat food, it's made of carbs, proteins, and fats, lipids. We can't use that as energy, even though there's a lot of energy stored in those molecules. We can't do that. We have to convert them to ATP, which is the only energy molecule our human body can use. It's kind of like if you went on a trip around the world and you came back and you had euros from France and yen from Japan and maybe pesos from Mexico. When you go to Burger King here in the United States to order a delicious cheeseburger, you can't pay with foreign currency. You have to exchange it at a bank. And that's what your metabolism does. It takes the inputs of all the different kinds of foods you eat, carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, and it converts it in your mitochondria into ATP. But when you take a bite of a cheeseburger, how does that cheeseburger get the nutrients to your brain to keep your brain functioning? You don't just mash the cheeseburger in your head. What happens? What's the first thing you do when you eat a cheeseburger? You bite it and you chew it. We're going to talk about what that is and what that does. But you have to chew it up. And when you're chewing it, what are you really doing? You're kind of, yeah, Nick.
You're kind of like squishing around and breaking pieces to increase the surface area.
Yeah, you're breaking it down and you're mashing it up. And that's going to increase the surface area for your enzymes, which we will talk about more tomorrow. And eventually you have to break your carbs, lipids, and proteins out of the polymers that they are, bread, French fries, rice, tomatoes, ranch dressing, bacon, into the monomers. Because your body can't absorb the giant molecules, but it can absorb the small building blocks. And those things are going to go into something that we'll talk about tomorrow called the nutrient pool. So in the nutrient pool, you're going to have simple sugars, amino acids, and fatty acids. And how do we get that to happen? Well, remember, in aerobic respiration, we have to have glucose, which we eat. That is a monomer. Oxygen, we just get that from the air easily. We don't have to do anything to it. And from that, we get the output of ATP energy, like we learned yesterday, and the two waste products, carbon dioxide, which we exhale, and water, which we remove as sweat or urine, is a waste product, right? So let's take a look at what's happening here. The way we break this down is by chewing, you're not going to break your food down into monomers. You need the help of a special protein in your body produced by everybody called an enzyme. And an enzyme is a protein that catalyzes the chemical reaction that breaks down your food. A catalyst is something that causes a chemical reaction to go faster. Because if we had to chew up our food and just wait for it to eventually break down into monomers, simple sugars, and amino acids, it would take an extremely long time. Thankfully, enzymes are there to do it. So when you eat carbohydrates, the enzyme amylase breaks it down into simple sugars. And that's what your body can absorb. When you eat proteins, a class of enzymes called proteinases that digest proteins break that down into the monomers of amino acids. And lipids are exposed to a type of enzyme called a lipase that's going to break lipids into fatty acids. What do you notice about the three names of the enzymes? Amylase, proteinase, lipase. They all end in ACE. Most enzymes will end in the letters ASE. So whenever you see something that has an ACE at the end, you know it's an enzyme. Not all of them. There's things like trypsin or chymotrypsin that don't have an ACE at the end, but most of them do. Now, here's the big thing. Why do we need water?
To help us survive.
Correct. These enzymes cannot do their job unless you have sufficient water, not in your bloodstream. The enzymes, your food's not in your bloodstream, it's in your digestive system. You need to have water in your stomach to aid those enzymes in breaking down your food. And I've got a short little video here I'm going to play. Biochemical reactions for this are called dehydration synthesis and hydrolysis. So when you're putting together monomers, like you eat a bunch of glucose and you're storing it as glycogen, you need to have water present, or you're going to generate water, and when you're breaking it down, you've got to have water to carry out hydrolysis, which literally means breaking with water. So let's just watch this short video.
Many important biological molecules are made of repeating subunits, called monomers. When many monomers join, the result is a polymer. For example, amino acid monomers join to form a protein polymer, and glucose monomers combine to form a complex carbohydrate polymer. Biological polymers form by dehydration synthesis reactions. As you can see here, each of the monomers in this reaction has a hydrogen, or H, and a hydroxyl, or OH group. In the course of the reaction, the hydrogen is removed from one monomer and the hydroxyl group from the other. The hydrogen and hydroxyl group combine to form water, and a bond links the two monomers. Hydrolysis is the opposite of a dehydration synthesis reaction. During a hydrolysis reaction, a polymer is reduced to its monomer subunits by the addition of water. In fact, the word hydrolysis literally means to break water. The hydroxyl group from a water molecule attaches to one monomer, and the remaining hydrogen attaches to the other monomer. In other words, water is used to break the bond holding monomers together. Let's do a quick recap. During dehydration synthesis, monomers join to form polymers, and water is released. The opposite happens during hydrolysis, where water is added to the reaction to break a polymer into monomers.
Okay, there's the answer to our question. Let me rephrase it. In order for you to digest your food, you need to have water to break the bond. Digestion is hydrolysis. And if you don't have enough water in your stomach, what's going to happen to the food you ate? It's going to just sit there. That's right. It's just going to sit there. And what's that called when you can't digest your food and you feel kind of funny?
You're constipated and you can't go.
Well, constipation is a little bit different, but it can lead to that. You have indigestion, right? You take Pepto-Bismol. Right? Have you ever had that where you go somewhere, you eat a big burrito or something, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible. Drink some water. Drink water. You've got to have water for your enzymes to be able to work. So let's just to show this, when we're putting together molecules into monomers into polymers, then it's going to release water. Now, we don't do that very often because that's what plants are doing when they're making glucose and making carbohydrates. But when we eat the food, we are doing hydrolysis. And we've got to add that water that came out, we've got to add it back in so that we can break it apart into the monomers. That's all that's happening. That is why water is part of the rule of threes. Without water, you can't have digestion of your food, and you will probably just starve to death because you're never going to digest your food and you're never going to absorb it, right? So metabolism is when we break down our food into the component monomers that it needs to create energy. And the main inputs are going to be food and air in aerobic respiration, and water is the other input that is going to help these enzyme catalysts to help them speed up the reaction so we can digest our food in time to make ATP to carry out our life functions, right? The outputs are going to be ATP, our energy molecule, carbon dioxide, and water again. That's why human beings have to have water. We are all about water. Water is essential for your enzymes to be able to digest your food. So, how much water do you need? A day.
At least 3 gallons, up to 3 gallons.
Ooh, 3 gallons is a lot.
2 gallons.
Yeah, Nick, what do you think?
How much are you supposed to drink when you feel thirsty?
Well, you are supposed to drink when you feel thirsty, but you should probably get in the habit of drinking 1,500 or 1,500 milliliters of water. How much is that? Okay, you know those water bottles you're always asking me to let you go down to student service to pick up? Each one of those is 500 milliliters. So you need 3 of those bottles a day. If you have one with breakfast, one with lunch, and one with your dinner, you're going to have no acid indigestion, you're going to digest your food, and you're going to be feeling really good, and you're going to be well hydrated. Now, if you wanted to drink 3 gallons of water, good luck. There is such a thing as water poisoning. You can have too much water. But 1,500 milliliters is about that much. And how much is it? That's 1.5 liters. So you know the size of like a liter bottle of Pepsi? 1.5 of those of water.
What if you get one of the big bottles?
Great, great. Spread it out over the day. Unless you're really thirsty, then drink more. If it's hot and you're outside, you might want more. Okay. So we're going to stop here and go ahead and stop Trace.